Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave.
Broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's Wow, is this the delay?
No,
If
I made
that's
that
the
bit
delay.
up.
No, but if that's the delay, because I just okay, good. Let's assume it's wait, this is show number 370 something. 470 and 300. And we're talking about Giants again. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. If you missed Solaris' show, shame on you. I did, of course. I always do. It's horrible. But she had a great show, I'm sure. And if you did miss it, you can actually pay $5 and just get subscriptions to the archives. And in the archives, you will find all the shows of all the hosts. Solaris is awesome every week, and I do today, she spoke to Steve Colburn about MyLabs and alien implants. MyLabs are military abductions. So abductions fall into two main categories. One is what we think is perpetrated on us by others, and other abductions are perpetrated by, well, the military, right? So thing to say about that, and I'll throw it to him in a second. But before I do, please do go ahead and subscribe to shows on revolution.radio. And I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For me, that's the Daruk people, and for Dave,
The Dark and Young.
the Dark and Young. And we like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And we have to realize that tens of thousands of generations of people have lived here and in every part of the world, in fact, and they had stories and cultures and mysteries, and only now are we beginning to understand just how far back that actually goes. In fact, probably even further than we think, and by a stretch, that is. Dave, since I said such a well, Steve Colburn is an interesting guest, and alien implants is interesting because when it comes to our field of research, Dave, myself, and the other hosts on Revolution Radio, tangible evidence is usually hard to come by. Tangible evidence is something that we all crave, and when we find it, for the most part, it either disappears or is completely discredited. Not correctly so, but certainly discredited in the eyes of the public and the establishment. So it's hard to present any credible evidence in the face of such animosity. But some physical evidence is just irrefutable. And in my opinion, the implants that people have are along those lines. There's some other things which I might mention at some other point, but Dave, since we had Steve Colburn with Solaris just now, what is your take?
Timmy Mackie. Hi everyone, and welcome to Shiny Side Out. My take on them, I agree with you. It is one of those. It's supposed to be an unanswerable question. You've said, I wonder if implants are real, and then you discover that there's a doctor that used to take them out. Why? I don't know. Normal earthbound metals, and which is typically a giveaway. However, that doctor's now deceased, died, in inverted commas, died. There's a whole bunch of people that died in, whether you're, you've brought information out and they just want you to disappear, and they don't mind it takes like 15 years to die.
To be clear, they actually have died So that's not in question here. So Dave is not saying died in inverted commas because they actually
suggesting
did die.
They've gone underground.
I know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No. Yeah, just for our esteemed listenership, they actually are no longer with us, and they.
Yeah, or there's, remember that people used to die of car accidents from the. And just push the accelerator or make. Yeah, well, it's plausible whether someone could do that now. In many different forums, quite possibly, that it's a thing. And whether it's a brain cancer or riddled with cancer, or people that were lined up to come on the show have also died of cancer. So we got to them a little. Be a tool that the three-letter agencies have, or the governments of the world have, to be able to silence you, that brings on cancer is my guess. Died of cancer. Everyone gets cancer now, right? 1 in 2 people get cancer. So
well,
that's also true. Yeah, completely.
So cancer through a virus and Hopla virus. Hopla. I can't remember. But that's how they supposedly got rid of Mali, right? In fact, he suffered from cancer of the foot, but because he is Rastafarian, he wasn't allowed to amputate his
tube with some radioactive substance by one of your phalanges as your fingers. So if you were holding a tube hidden underneath a coat or something, like shooting them with radiation exposure, and that eventually would kill you. And so but the holder of it would be completely sealed against that. And I believe that's an actual thing, and that. Or a bus or just anywhere at all, and be able to do that and give that exposure out. So given that that's one vector, there's obviously 100 billion more. Just knowing where they consumed food or coffee is something. Someone surreptitiously, not obviously. Like, not, we hauled him into prison for no reason whatsoever, framed him on something, and then killed him in prison. That's just too much effort. You could just have someone on the ground do it, Just die a relatively quick death. Didn't know you had cancer, alive and well. Suddenly the doctor says, in fact, I think you've got like 6 months. And then they fall off the perch, right? And we're seeing this a bit more often. So the people who have removed implants have gone that way. The doctor went for some time until That's what I was looking for. So you start the stopwatch and then see how long it is before they pass away, you know? At the moment, there's so much information out there and there's so many people. Before YouTube, you had to get budget and approvals and be able to make a documentary and then get it out there and sell it and get it to... At least you're getting a message out and people can download it and they can distribute it, you know, amongst their friends, and they can talk about it. At least if there's a topic of conversation that's generated from anything mechanized. I don't want the 3-letter agency thing. I don't want that. I've got a best to leave it in. I don't know who put be used for. Not to track you, but to find you maybe. Yeah? Say there was an event coming up and they've decided you got the golden ticket, but we won't give you a golden ticket. We'll just put an implant in you, so, you know. Is that right? I don't know. I'm putting those questions out there because I don't think anyone is going to have an answer until we find whether the aliens that people have been reporting are here as aliens. To then get followed up by a mind lab. So, my question is, your experiences have been, you know, let's just call them unknowns, or are they my labs? Because I think by anybody or having tests run on them or whatever those things are, because, you know, that test so I get my best MyLab people to try and maybe the whole thing are my labs. Maybe there's no such thing as an alien abduction. Maybe once we got the tech, we went, hey, you know what we can do now? We can start abducting people. We don't know, because we don't know. These are still on the table. My thoughts are that what they see. I don't believe that the whole thing is fictitious. I believe that if the person says it's tall whites or small greys, or you see the Antarians, or, you know, the style of people, whoever they are, if the people are saying they're seeing those, I'm going with that at the moment. That's just the way it is. There's only Whitley Strieber mentioned MyLabs at one point, and he said it's, in his words, they're distinctly different experiences. One is you feel like you're connected to the entire universe, and there's no answer you don't have to any question you could possibly think of, so you don't bother thinking of anything because you're connected to everything. And the other one is a violent, unhappy place where you can be injured during it. Yeah. So, and that's the MyLab one. And that people don't seem very happy when they're experiencing that one. He heard screams coming from a tent after seeing a light come down and discovered it was military personnel in there doing some kind of abduction thing. So that was I heard him talking about this story. Anyway, that's my view, and I'll give it back to the studio.
Nice. I'd like to thank David Duggar, our foreign correspondent, speaking to us from the front lines. Is that an explosion I hear in the background there? Yes, it must be. Dave, are you still with us? Dave, come in. Houston, we have a problem.
No. It appears as though Dave has just received the highest accolade or award in a foreign country for journalism.
Very nice.
It's being blown up.
Nice.
Being blown up or shot by the Americans.
Yeah, exactly. Is that trying to be extradited to the United States
rather than being extradited?
Oh, that's hilarious. But look,
because you could be a Reuters journalist being shot by a helicopter.
Oh,
but anyway,
look, absolutely. But the thing is, what we've seen, and Dave just flippantly made reference to it. But it's like we have seen the end of well, not the end of. I think the end happened a long time ago. But what we've seen now is the militarization and real crackdown on all opinions other than those that are accepted. It was okay before to say this and that and the other, and you're still protected, certainly in the States, by the First Amendment and so forth. And but more and more we see things, and it's really interesting. Things change, but it's really interesting that it's changing in a world that is so overloaded with social media, and it's actually the social media that's leading the charge. So it is the YouTubes and the Facebooks of the world that go in and well, I don't want to say willy-nilly, but certainly go ahead and censor content and leave other content alone, and there doesn't seem to be a guideline anywhere. It's just what happens. So it's like the worst kind of misguided self-censorship you can think of. And before it used to be that, well, it's all open. The internet is for all. The internet is maybe a slightly anarchistic place, and it's maybe the last true platform for freedom. And hence, I guess we are obviously broadcasting through that medium to you. So there's still some truth to it. But governments are cracking down, social media is cracking down, servers are being shut down. You can't get through certain firewalls unless you have a Tor browser. Good luck to trying to get anywhere. And just in case you're wondering, the Tor browser, right? T-O-R actually means a portal in German. Tor means portal.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It is. It's portal. So that's all it means, and it's clever, of course, because it is a Tor. A Tür is and the word door, which is an ancient Germanic word, comes from Tor. The word door and the German Tür.
Really?
Oh, yeah, we're learning something today, aren't we?
No. That means an awful lot.
Right. Okay. Well, good. Because that's what it is. It is a door, and it's the last door that I know of that lets you browse the internet completely unencumbered. Okay, because it bounces your address all around the world, and it opens virtual circuits between its instances. So it's true peer-to-peer browsing, if you will, in a sense. You're creating a global network that accesses even the darknet, if you wanted to do so, through a Tor circuit. So that's Tor for you. But yeah, I find it disturbing, Dave, that we do see this crackdown, and I guess it was only a matter of time, because we do have every person that has a mobile phone can be a journalist now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're now, in fact, not just a photojournalist, but you're a video journalist, a filming, journalist that can take part in the action and bring the action to us immediately. Stream it. Probably the worst case of that we saw when the attack in New Zealand happened, where it was streamed live to Facebook. That's probably the worst kind of usage that you can see. And you have to ask yourself, well, why did that happen? And I believe it happened for a number of reasons, not least of which is the fact that an act like that would make everybody cry out and say, oh no, we can never let that happen again. And I agree. Dave agrees. We can't let it happen again. But by the same token, we have now opened the door to, well, if that's not allowed, then there should be a whole bunch of other things that shouldn't be allowed. Boom.
And that's what happened. That's exactly
what happened. In fact, it's really... Go on.
No, I'm just saying, so I know there's 3 websites you can't get to now from Australia. That's all. 4chan, 8chan, I forget the other one. and these were anonymously postable forums. Yeah, you could just talk about anything you wanted. It was all anonymous. No information was kept. No IP addresses. Nothing. You could be whatever you wanted in there, and you could talk about anything. And it was fine. Yeah, but that's shut down now. So thanks to the guy that went to New Zealand on for a shooting holiday.
But look, that's exactly right. No, Dave. The thing is this though, and this is interesting. And if you liken it to the American congressional and even senatorial process, in America a bill is dreamt up. Right? The bill here's a bill, more money for schools. That's the bill. We're going to spend another $1 billion on schools. Yay! Everybody says that's a great idea. Let's do that. Okay. And then a whole bunch of other politicians come along. Oh, but I want to write on the bill, and if you're on my agreement, then you're going to put this bill up as well. So it becomes from starting off as the Collins bill, it now becomes the Collins, Smith, Ryder, Jackson, and Bush bill. And 4 or 5 people would have put their riders on it, meaning other things were added to an initially good idea, such as, well, we should really arm all the school guards, and yes, there should be no more drugs allowed anywhere, and everybody who has a drug should be shot. So these are all passed or tagged onto a bill that then passes because we all agree that's a good idea. So the first bill was a great idea. It's a good idea. We should not let that happen. And then all the other stuff comes with it just to get that passed. And it's similar with this here, right? So this one good idea of not letting it happen again, that's a good idea. I'm for it. A lot of people are for it. And in fact, you're going to be... there's something wrong with you if you're not for it. but then, by extension, other things happen. And as Dave just said, 3 websites are now no longer accessible because there is a chance, Dave. There is a risk that these sites might post something like that again in the future because, well, frankly, it can't be controlled. And just on the off chance that someone will do this, we are now denying you access to it. It's like saying, well, we don't know if you're going to stop drinking at the 1 beer or you're going to have 10 beers. But if you have 10 beers, that's definitely bad for you. If you've got 20 beers, you might hurt someone else. If you got 30 beers, you will definitely become a nuisance. So there'll be no beer at all, right? So there's no more beer, and that's
right.
It.
Yeah, it's a preposterous way of looking at things.
Yeah, but it's the penultimate nanny state. In Australia, we're getting to the nanny state. I mean, some of the things, it boggles the mind. I mean, in most parts of the world, Western society, not just, but mostly, you need a license for virtually everything. Mm-hmm. You need a license to go fishing, to go hunting, to go camping, to have a pet. The only thing, and we've spoken about this before, the only thing you don't need a license for is to have a child. But everything else, you need a license for. And you have to ask yourself, oh my God, everybody is regulating everything. And you have to ask yourself, is it really worth it? And the answer is no. I don't think it is worth it. A fishing license. Oh, they tell me, oh no, sorry, you can't get a fishing license. I said, why? Well, there have already been 158,342 people that have a license, and that's our quota. Dave, but that's the only reason why I can imagine a license is required. Because you don't sit for a test.
No.
You just pay the money. Here's the money, whatever it is, and now give me my license. So it's the only thing it is for a form of government, be it local, state, or federal, or otherwise, to make money of you. Have you realized, this brings me to my favorite topic, sorry to go on about this, but it's that time of year. We got to vote here now. And in Australia, we got to vote. We got a 2-party system, neither of which is really looking after us. Okay, neither party. And the thing is this, you'd like to vote Labour, right? And Labour is looking after the little person and this and that, but they have got no idea. From a fiscal point of view, and to be honest with you, it would hurt me to vote Labour. And it would hurt anyone that is making a good income, working hard, two parents that are working and trying to put their kids through school, paying a mortgage. Voting for Labour is a bad idea if you've got a good job. If you've got a minimum wage job, voting for Labour is a great idea. right? That's awesome. Good, go for it. But if you're okay and you worked hard and you probably studied or whatever you did, and now you're doing okay, then you're going to be punished for that. In Australia, and it's similar in other nations. In fact, it's worse in the Scandinavian countries. In Australia, once you do the math, okay, direct and indirect taxes account for about 80% of your income. 80% of your income goes away in taxes if you drive. If you drive your own vehicle. If you do not drive your own vehicle, it's closer to 65, 70%. But if you drive your own vehicle, right, if you've got a car or a truck or motorbike or whatever, 75 to 80, once you sit down and do the math. Okay, so that leaves you 20%. So if you want to spend $20, right, you have to earn 100. Mm-hmm. So that's direct and indirect taxes, and our fuel excise, for example, in Australia, is astronomical. It is unbelievable. But everything here is taxed. So you have the GST, which is the goods and services tax, like a VAT, value-added tax, 10%, and then there are other taxes that go on top of that. There's so many taxes here. We've lost count. We don't even know what is being taxed anymore. So we just go and pay the price. It's come to a point, Dave, where you're actually better off. From that point of view, you're better off to be on unemployment benefit, right? You're better off to not work at all, because you're paying the lowest tax, and at the end of the day, you might not have all the luxuries in life, sure, but if you can live with that, if you're okay with that, you can have a very nice life in Australia without ever lifting a finger. It's true.
Do Meki, if you haven't already done it, go to the Voting Compass website, and it's all you have to do is Google it and Voting Compass. And if you're a foreigner, you can still do it anyway and see which one you would vote for. Entertain yourself with it. And more than 1 million people have chosen it, and there's roughly over 1 million people who have voted early as well, so they can ignore all of the media hype about the election. Of course, this Sunday, today, is meant to be the beginning of their campaign, but they've been beginning the campaign for weeks now since they called it. And this is only the official beginning, so whatever it's going to look like in this last week or two. And I've done maybe 5, 7... You're going to vote this time? Who do you think is going to win, even despite your vote? All this kind of thing. And what's your most important? You consider the most important when voting. And I think it's quite the challenge, to be honest. It's quite a challenge, because if you're only given one thing to choose, then it doesn't just differentiate the parties very well between each other, because they're not drastically different, except on climate. And if you live anywhere on the whole planet, anywhere at all, you'll be affected by it one way or another. The climate is more than the most important thing. And you know what? The generations of our children and their children, if they get that far, before there's climate refugees, they're going to look at us and go, "You did nothing. What?" So trickle-down economics is another way of describing one of the parties, and that's all they believe in. And the other is, if you're able to at least treat the workers good enough that they maintain employment, that the economy will do a better job. So one looks at the people, the other looks at the business, and the other one looks at the... One of them is given money by the big polluters. Each one of them is, because you can't deny these donations, and I think all of that's right. Beliefs on this, that the system might have been okay for a while, but it's certainly not going in the right direction. That it's one of those conversations certainly as you're coming up to the election, that you've got to choose. And I think it's tough. I think these times are tough. For someone to rule over us, or is it, or are we looking for true representative politics? We've got a local member who's going to fight, as he can for all of the constituency, or only the ones that voted for them, or are they only interested in what they want anyway, and be damned if they're going to their constituents? And that's really tough. And you know what? Maybe there's a better solution.
Darn those communists! Pinko.
I'm not even doing that. I'm just saying maybe there's modifications to this one we can do. We can maybe do Westminster version 2 or something, right? To be honest, the message, it's all about the it's all about the messages. And truly, if everyone lay down all of the things they wanted and we weighted them based on the long-term effect of those, I think we should be voting in favor of the things that had the longest term gain.
You know what?
I'm a communist.
That would be you are the worst kind of communist. You're a pinko Reno socialist communist. And the funny thing is this: people say these things and they have no idea what any of these mean.
No,
they just don't know. I think it's just saying you're a communist. Okay, do you understand what that means? So right now in the world, and in fact never at any point did there exist such a thing as a true communist state. Didn't exist, was never there. Oh, you're one in Russia and China. No. They were following Marxism, Leninism, or even Maoism. Mm-hmm. But it was not the Karl Marx pure communism that was touted. In fact, in Russia, it was more Trotskyism than Marxism. But it wasn't communism. Communism is a very simple, straightforward way of thinking. In fact, communism, right, is exactly what you see in Star Trek. But it only works if you've got mature, grown-up human beings that treat each other the way they should, right? I know, right?
All right, we're way off.
Stand-up comedy right here. I'm your week. So communism is not a bad idea. It really isn't. It's just, hey, let's give everybody a chance to do whatever it is they want to do. Let everybody have a chance to contribute to the greater good, and let's not hoard it in someone's cellar. It's like that monkey experiment, right? It's this monkey, and there's a couple of monkeys living together, and there's actually a whole herd of them. And what happens is these scientists give like a whole mountain of bananas to these monkeys, and the strongest monkey sits on top of the bananas and beats down on every other monkey that tries, and apes as well, by the way. Chimps are no different from the monkeys in that space. And the difference between apes and monkeys is apes don't have tails, in case you're wondering. Mm-hmm. Anyway, point is, so these monkeys, now the strong monkey beats down on the weak monkey, and all the weak monkeys, and none of them get to eat except for the strong monkey, or monkeys as it were. So, and it doesn't matter if the banana rots or not, they will not share. They can't eat all the bananas, but they will not give you one. Oh no, you can't have a banana, but you don't need it. It's my banana! And beats it on the head. It's mine. That's not your banana. It's my banana. Bang, bang, bang. Get away from my bananas. That's us. That's who we are. Mm-hmm. I still struggle to justify the existence of billionaires. Oh, but they worked hard. They're, entrepreneurs, giants of industry. No, not all of them. And if anything, vanishingly few. Because nobody gets to be a billionaire without having stepped on a few corpses along the way. So, and that's just the nature of the beast.
So, Mackie, who are you going to get to start your car in the mornings now?
I got my neighbor. Hey, Bob! Come on,
Bob, start my car for me. Yeah.
No, but look, it's not a new thing. I mean, billionaires can't be justified in our current situation. It used to be, I guess, actually, they could never be justified, but today it's especially egregious because of the situation the rest of the world finds itself in. Look around, see people dying from preventable diseases. See people starving. When I say people, I mean children, men, women, and the elderly in other, in various parts of the world. Look around the misery. There was one story which I found, well, was I astonished? I wasn't astonished, but it stuck with me. Last week or the week before in India, there was a man who was beaten to death. He was beaten so severely, he died from his injuries. Okay, so he was beaten to death. If they intended to kill him or not is actually irrelevant, because he was beaten to death by a group of other men. Now, what is his crime, you ask? Well, what he did was sit down and eat at a wedding in the presence of the other men. Now, what you don't know is that this particular man was of the lowest caste possible, and the other men were of the highest caste possible. So they were affronted grievously, clearly, by this person having the audacity to sit down at a wedding that they were at and eat in their presence. It was both the sitting, by the way, both the sitting and the eating that got him beaten up and subsequently killed. And this happened today. I mean, when I say today, in this day and age, a week ago, in this world, in the world's largest democracy, they say. The caste system is strong and it's well, and it's not going to go anywhere for a long time. But just realize, okay, what world we live in. If you don't live in that kind of environment, you're blessed. You're lucky. You've won the jackpot. If you can go and sit at a wedding and eat without being beaten to death, you're a winner. Okay, it's crazy if you think about it. So how can I justify the existence of billionaires? Okay, so if you work hard and you've got good ideas, that's awesome, right? That's really good, and then you should be rewarded for that. I completely agree. You should have the biggest house in the street, and you should have a boat and a jet. Yeah, all of that. Okay, but that's it. That's it. You shouldn't have more than that, because that's insane. If we keep going the way we are, okay, and our economy, and I'm talking about the global economy, is the way it is. We are seeing a polarization of wealth on one end of the spectrum, and that leads to a scarcity economy. Why, you ask? Because if you've got 100,000 people making okay money and being the middle class and earning, and spending and generally keeping the economy alive, and you shift that money from those 100,000 people to 2 or 3 billionaires, you've just hurt the economy in a way that it may never recover from, because those 100,000 people which no longer make the money they did, they're all unemployed, they're now at the bottom of the food chain, minimum wage, whatever, so they can't afford the holiday, they can't afford the family sedan or SUV, they can't afford the house anymore, they can't afford to go bowling on the weekend or whatever it is, whereas the money that has gone from them has gone to the 2 or 3 billionaires, right? Because the 100,000 people have generated billions, and they're now with Bob and John and Joey over here. Now, these billionaires are not going to have the same economic impact as the 100,000 people have on this side of the equation. Because, yes, they will buy the massive house, and they will go and buy the jet and so forth, but their economic activity will not offset the economic activity of the 100,000 people that have just become disenfranchised. And that's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly where we're going. We're concentrating the wealth of the planet in a vanishingly small group. We used to call them the 1%ers. It's not like that. It's the 1% of the 1%, okay? Mm-hmm. That's really That's where the wealth is concentrated. And there's no justification for it. By the same token, and this is going to give me a lot of hate, and I don't really care, the church, the Catholic Church specifically, not just the Catholic Church, but the Catholic Church as the poster child here, is worth hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. And this is an organization which purportedly is here representing the Christian God, Jesus. So the pontifex, the Pope, is here representing Jesus. That's his job. Okay, he's here to represent Jesus, who is allegedly the Son of God. That's okay, I get it, right? Have you looked around yourself? If you haven't been to Vatican City, go to any Catholic cathedral in the world, and have a look. Look how richly it is decorated. Look at the golden robes and the windows. But if you have the chance to go to Vatican City, go. Which is one of the largest landowners on the planet. So it's the Queen, but that's another story. So can you justify this? No, you can't. And you can't justify monarchy anymore either. Today, everybody gets some, Dave. Everybody's getting some. You can't.
Spread the love, Mickey. Spread the love.
And I'll tell you why you can't. This man, and it was a man, would rule the land, and it made sense because he could knock everybody else in the head. So everybody, goes, okay, let's follow Bob, he's strong. And that's how the kingship came about. But as the kingship became more abstract, it was no longer related to someone's strength or intellect. Some other justification had to be found. So what do? Divine right. You are governing by divine right. God gave you the mandate. It's fantastic. So the church and the monarchies work together to keep the people in the mud. Okay? In the mud. If you haven't seen, what was it? This is hilarious Monty Python movie, and it escapes me at the moment. The Holy Grail. If you haven't seen the Holy Grail, I ask you, please go ahead and do it. There's a wonderful mud scene in it. But so the churches, all of them, and the monarchies conspired to justify each other, right? Oh yeah, the king is here by divine right. God has mandated that this king should rule. Oh, long live the king is dead. Oh, now God has decreed that this king should rule. And on it goes. So it is a completely artificial construct which is rooted in nothing but inequality and oppression. That's what royalty is all about. Oppression and inequality. Institutionalized and justified by a religious symbol. It's fantastic. I love it. And yet people love their monarchs. They love the monarchy. I don't get it. I really don't. To me, it's some kind of insanity, right? It is some kind of insanity. So we are living in a world that is highly unequal. It is highly questionable in its moral approach, and we have allowed it to happen. And whenever you see this happening, what would you do? Is my question to you. Do you support the inequality? Do you think something should be done about it? Do you think that people at the bottom of the food chain are there because they're so ordained by God or a higher power, or their own inability to generate millions of dollars? And ask yourself, if you're doing okay, if you're well off, and I hope that our listenership is. I mean, they can at least afford a computer, I guess, right? Ask yourself how you got there. How much luck did you have to be born where you are and to enjoy the things you do? And now imagine going to a wedding, sitting down and eating, and then being beaten to death for it. And that's your only crime, sitting down and eating, in the presence of your betters. Okay? It's a very sobering kind of picture I'm conjuring up in your minds. But it's important that we think about it. It is really critical. That's the end of my rant.
Oh, good. Because I was going to remind you, oh, look, there's some lovely filth over there.
Oh, that's the best filth I've seen in ages.
Old woman, man, sorry, what knight lives in that castle over there? I'm 37. What?
I'm old.
37. I'm not old. Well, I can't just call you man. Well, you could say Dennis. Well,
that's my name,
I didn't know you were called Dennis. Well, you didn't bother to find out, did you?
That is the scene. That's the scene. If you haven't seen it, I beg you.
Help! I'm being repressed. See the violence inherent in the system. This is my other best one from Dennis. Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis of a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate of the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony.
This is brilliant. This is brilliant. I love it. And I urge you, please, listenership, do watch all the Monty Python movies, but start with the Holy Grail and followed immediately by The Life of Brian. Because those guys had balls, if you think about it, Dave.
They did. More boy. They were shining a mirror back on the system, weren't they?
Oh, my. It was chutzpah and then some. But it was necessary. And now we look at it and we laugh. But the sad truth is, it is completely accurate.
Oh, yes.
This is the British. Yeah, the British are really good at this. I don't know why. Maybe there's this massive undercurrent. Maybe since before Guy Fawkes. I would say before Guy Fawkes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Then you go back to Queen Boudica, if you will. But there's certainly this undercurrent of revolution that is ferment within Great Britain, and certainly within Ireland and Scotland. When I say Great Britain, I'm talking about obviously all of UK and all that. Sorry, England rather. But it's certainly an undercurrent that's very strong. And the intellectuals in Great Britain are fully aware of the system. And the way they express themselves through comedy. Yeah, Monty Python, Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister,
Yes.
Blackadder, right? And so forth. It is genius. And it is completely and utterly true. But nobody has picked up any guidelines or any courage and actually done anything. So no one has stood up and said, "Oh yeah, let's go and change the system." We laugh at it.
Oh boy, don't we?
But because it couldn't possibly be like this, Dave. It couldn't possibly be this preposterous, but it is.
But it actually is, yeah. And do you know what? Do you know what's even funnier is the description in that same scene a bit later on, where Dennis advises King Arthur what system that he believes they're running in, right? And he says, "I told you we're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week." He goes, "Yes, but all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting by a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs, by a 2/3 majority in the case of..." It's so funny. It is,
Oh, yeah.
honestly. And I know that Nighthawk plays that grab too in one of the bumpers. Do you know what? If you can't see through that into the reality of what's actually going on, there's something else that, I mean, to be honest, we really should have been able to see this. Now, in both of our cases, in the US, even UK, and in the USA, what are we really voting for? It's basically a figurehead or a figure party head who is an inept as the last people to get anything done, because the ministry beneath it, the public servants, are really the ones that are just trying to cement their jobs into place and make sure they don't lose money in their departments. Because honestly, Mickey, all of that, the Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister stuff is honestly, it's spot on.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree with you.
100%. Yeah, and it's really interesting. But I think what we've lost collectively in the Western world certainly is that spark. And we've spoken about this before, Dave, through education or miseducation, through nutrition or malnutrition, and TV. I guess we have become a disenfranchised populace. We don't know that we're disenfranchised. We don't know, but we can no longer think for ourselves and identify the things that are wrong. We are very happy to maintain the status quo. I mean, the height of that irony came to me years ago. The Labour Party had a surplus. There was a surplus of some money, and the Labour Party said, "Oh, we're going to distribute it to the people." And everybody got, $2,000, something like that, right? Everybody in Australia. But but not all of us. Only if you were making under a certain amount. There was it got progressively less the more money you made. Anyway, so everyone got $2,000, and what they said is, "Oh, buy yourself a big screen TV." It was the big screen TV handout
That was
given.
Uncle Kevin's Christmas bonus. Yes,
It was, and I thought, and Dave just reminded me about the message. That's the message. That's the message. It's here's we thought, oh, that's a brilliant idea. Let's just give $2,000 to everybody to buy them a big screen TV. Now, all it was on the surface was shameless vote grabbing, obviously, but underlying that is there was a complete mismanagement of funds. You should not give people just a once-off cash payment. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. What you should have done, like what the Scandinavian countries did, and open up a governmental account, a trust fund, if you will, for the Australian people, in which you deposit the money. In fact, there should have been more money coming in from the mining boom. There should be hundreds of billions of dollars sitting in a trust fund for Australia that pays for all our medical needs, all our education, and all our transportation needs. We are a population of less than 30 million people, less than 30 million, and our mineral wealth is staggering. And there's the music. Don't go anywhere. Science fact. Hard science after the break.
you're back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on, you guessed it, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 a month. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today, and I'm glad you're on board. So whether you follow, subscribe, or otherwise, chuck yourself in. The ride can be bumpy, and since it's a tinfoil hat zone, remember there's no flash photography. Keep your arms inside the vehicle. Turn off your personal reality inverters, and sit tight. All right. So hopefully I'm not double muted. It doesn't appear so. Meckie's going to be back any second. And yeah, what else do I have? There he is. This is show number 374.
470 and 300. I think that's not democracy. It's not. It doesn't have any democracy in it.
In the break, I sent through to Meckie a link with the script of Holy Grail, and the one line that I didn't get to say in there, which was, "You're fooling yourself. We live in a dictatorship, the self-perpetuating autocracy in which the working classes," and then his
Oh, there you go! Bring your class into it again.
That's what it's all about. If only people would. It's just so funny. Like, it's it's dead set one of the funniest scenes in the movie. And thank heavens it exists. Did you know, Meckie, that they did that on such a tight budget? I think it was $30,000 or something like that. It was almost no money at all that they filmed and did the whole thing.
Well, their horses were coconut shells.
Yeah, they saved on money in some ways. And yet, that was what was being used in radio plays for horses.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
And so it translated very well, and I think the messages that came of it made us even just nominally look at ourselves and look at our situations, especially with our governments, and question. They even though it might have been fleeting. It might have been a transient thought, but needless to say, it's there, it's in living memory, and the people are heroes for it, and I applaud them.
Oh, absolutely. And look, quite a few of them are still alive, and they've done fairly well. But when you talk to them now, I've seen interviews. They go, "Oh yeah, we were crazy then." Because you get older and they have more invested in your life, and more things can go wrong, and there's just more at stake, and people like to distance themselves from their youthful revolutionary excursions, I want to say. And it's just the way it is. It's human nature. But certainly back in the 70s and 80s, when these movies were made, as well as the TV show, That's really. I guess there was a revolution in the air back then, 60s and 70s, right? It was a revolutionary time. And what happened to that? I mean, I really wonder sometimes. I look at the 60s and 70s, Dave, and I'm thinking, wow, there really was something there. There's a song in 1969 and 1977. There was a revolution in the air. And it's interesting that we have none of that these days. Our youth, well-to-do, never really had to, I guess have a hardship in their life. Always connected, always had something to eat. They're not interested, I guess, as we were, or maybe our previous generation was in the politics. I wonder who will come after us, is probably what I'm saying here. Dave, who will do this in 30 years' time?
If there was no electricity, they'd wander around aimlessly in circles, right?
Yes.
I really think that they would have a hard time trying to rebel against anything at all, unless it was the internet. If something happened to the internet, there was no more internet, that there might be an uprising to bring it back, and that's pretty much all that they'd be contained within themselves, right?
Yeah.
I know that it's a currency in my house. The internet and access, it's a privilege. It's not just an automated thing. And even though my kids do get a lot more than maybe some other kids, I know some kids, we try to have internet-free days where there's just no tech, like tech-free. And I know a difference, and I can see a difference between my kids and kids whose parents have said, you know what, I'm not going to give you the internet. You don't get the internet at all. And your tech is, restricted. So when those children meet, the children who have the least amount of tech have the most amount of conversation.
Oh, yes.
And the most ability in a conversation to make an argument or make a point and get the point across. Unfortunately, the kids with the most tech have the least conversational abilities.
Yeah. Well, they don't have to, right? Talking to people is so lame.
That's so yesterday, right?
So I don't even know. Facebook? What's Facebook, man?
Oh, that's the social media for the old people, apparently.
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely, 100%. If it's not instantaneous, and Facebook is not really instantaneous enough, really, right? Oh. But if it's instantaneous or funny, or there's some kind of a little meme that you can, like Instagram or Snapchat or something, boom, right here it is. It's funny, everybody loves it. Beep, 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 beep. All these pops and the likes pop up, the loves pop up, pop, 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 pop. If you don't get that, you get depressed and you probably do away with yourself because you can't stand the social rejection the internet has exposed you to. It's a problem. It's a problem. Now, there's another problem we have, and that's gigantism, or giants, which we're going to talk to you about. And
gigantism, that's from The Simpsons.
What a very, I know, right? What a very smooth segue that was.
Wow, it bowled me over that one.
I'm still feeling the cobblestones on that one. But today we're going to start off with hard science, and we've spoken about giants for the past few shows, and we strongly believe that there may have been giants in the past. They may still be around, a few remnants. There's an epiphany, though, Dave, I had this week, and I shared it on Facebook.
So?
I want to share it with you and our listenership. I put it. Solaris put up a post about this person allegedly having died at the age of 140 or 50 in China. And other people were commenting on it, and I made a comment around that as well, just saying, interesting. And she had a great, beautiful phrase of turn, which I can't recall now. I think something around the death algorithm, but it was a beautiful. I have to look it up again, and I'll use it. But she had a beautiful poetic turn of phrase there, describing why we die. Right? It's just like a automated death algorithm or some such. But the point that I was thinking about was, well, how then, if we have to build in kill switch, because I said we had to build in kill switch, the telomerase and all that, and other enzymes that are in there, or genetic malfunctions as well. At some point, it had to be given to us or delivered to us. And then I looked at the rest of biology on the planet, and most most creatures on this planet suffer from this. And now this is not surprising because we all of us on this planet share a lot of DNA, right? In the case of chimps, it's in the high 90% and goes down as low as 50, 60%. But we share an enormous amount of DNA with all other life forms on the planet. So what I think happened, and this is the epiphany, is that at some point in the past, rather than releasing genetically modified human beings into the wild, I think they didn't do that. What they did do, I mean, they did create us, yes. I don't think they created us specifically at that point with the shortcomings that we have. Oh, here we go. Mount is affected, frictional bodies limits when affected. Yeah, that's what I said. You're right. But I agree. I was looking. Here we go. This is what she said. Thank you, Mickey. She says, I agree. I was looking at the concept of death as a manufactured algorithm. How beautiful is that? I was looking at the concept of death as a manufactured algorithm. That's what Solaris said on Facebook. I'm stealing it. Great stuff. Thank you, Solaris, for that. But
you did advise her that you were going to steal that too. That's fine.
Yeah, I did. I don't wantonly steal. but so how do you then deliver it? So because I do believe that the Adamu, which were the race that was directly created by the Anunnaki and with the help of the Igigi, it was wiped out for the most part. Not entirely, I don't think entirely, but for the most part. And we are the younger race of people that came after them. I think a lot weaker in many ways, a lot more easily controllable and so forth. But I don't think necessarily that they did all the modifications all at once. I think they realized after a while we should really do this, this, and this. So it's like Microsoft releasing patches, right? They release a product and here it is. So it's in our nature, I guess, to do it. And then since the Anunnaki and Igigi made us in their own image, I don't see why that should be any different for us. So they made us, and there were some things that they wanted to fix. And I think one of the fixes they brought in fairly early on in the game was to make us mortal or to make us very short-lived. And I think they did it through a virus. A genetically engineered virus that attacks our genes and our basic biology. But because our basic biology is shared by the vast majority, not all, this is important, by the vast majority of our co-dwellers on this planet, animals and so forth.
Yep.
They were also affected, and they also then started to die, maybe more than maybe sooner than they should have. Others were fairly resilient, and others yet again were completely unaffected. If you look at the different lifespans in animals, right, you see that some are quite resilient, live to ripe old age. They found a shark that was several hundred years old recently. Certainly turtles, deep sea turtles, right, ocean-going turtles, they live for hundreds of years. Other animals live very, very long lifespans as well, and others don't die at all. Like we shared the jellyfish with you, for example. And maybe the jellyfish is sufficiently different from us, genetically speaking, that the virus didn't work on it. Remember the one that gets younger and then restarts the life cycle again?
That's right.
So fundamentally immortal for all intents and purposes. So I believe that our extremely short-lived lives are the result of some kind of a virus infection they subjected us to. And again, I don't think everybody was affected by that either. Not all human beings. I think there may have been some immunity factors involved here as well. Very, very, very small immunity factors, but it certainly makes sense from a whole bunch of other perspectives as well, and some of the stories we've shared with you in the past. So I believe very strongly, this is one of the epiphanies, that there was a genetically engineered virus that we were hit with, that was the planet was hit with, and it affected every living thing on it, more or less. But go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, thinking about how large the giants were, and our domesticated cat of ours at the height it is to our leg, could you imagine the giant's equivalent of the cheetah, as Lloyd Pye had put it? That it contains, dog and cat DNA, and it's never attacked a person. You know what I mean? It's more like the giant's version of our domesticated cat.
Correct. And in fact, the cheetahs are all genetically identical. All cheetahs are completely, in case you didn't know that, they're all clones of each other. And how do you do that? I don't know. I don't know. What they say. Well, yeah, exactly. See, what they say is when you talk to a scientist about this, and I use the word advisedly, oh, no, there was some kind of bottleneck event which severely restricted its genetic variance. No genetic variance. Clones. Complete clones of each other. So that's fascinating stuff. But yeah, you're right, Dave. You're 100% correct. So, which does bring us, though, back to the topic of giants. And I want to talk to you, and Dave wants to talk to you about the human height, or the nature of human height, and what the factors are that determine human height as well. So there's a bit of science coming your way. It is not boring, it's interesting, and I do urge you to listen. So human height or stature is the distance from the bottom of the feet to the top of the head in the human body, standing erect, of course. It is measured using a stadiometer, usually in centimeters when using the metric system, or feet in inches when using the imperial system. Now, this is interesting. A particular genetic profile in men called Y haplotype IM170 is correlated with height. So there's a gene actually correlated with height. Ecological data shows that as the frequency of this genetic profile increases in the population, the average male height in a country also increases. Studies show that there is a correlation between small stature and a longer life expectancy, interestingly. Individuals of small stature are also more likely to have lower blood pressure and are less likely to acquire cancer. The University of Hawaii has found that the longevity gene, which is FOXO3, that reduces the effects of aging, is more commonly found in individuals of a small body size. Short stature also decreases the risk of venous inefficiency. Now, that's essentially the ability of your heart to pump blood back from the legs into itself. Now, just on this, though, it's interesting that this would be the case, because if I wanted to get rid of the giants in a population, if I wanted to restrict the long life that they specifically had, I would make it so, and I would engineer my virus in such a way that it would weed out the giants early, right? And I let the little people live, and I encourage that genetic profile. Right, I make it long, because the longer you live, in theory, the more chances you have to reproduce. The shorter you live, the less chances you have to reproduce. Right, that's a fairly standard calculation. Now, when populations share genetic background and environmental factors, average height is frequently characteristic within the group. So it's a homogeneous group. Exceptional height variation, which is around 20% deviation from the average, within such a population is sometimes due to gigantism or dwarfism, which are medical conditions caused by specific genes or endocrine abnormalities. The development of human height can serve as an indicator of two key welfare components, namely nutritional quality and health. In regions of poverty or warfare, environmental factors like chronic malnutrition during childhood or adolescence may result in delayed growth and or marked reductions in adult stature, even without the presence of any of these medical conditions. Some research indicates that a greater height correlates with greater success in dating and earning in men, although other research indicates that this doesn't apply to non-white men. Very interesting. Dave?
Wow. Yes. The study of height is known as auxology. Growth has long been recognized as a measure of health of individuals, hence part of the reasoning for the use of growth charts. For individuals, as indicators of health problems, growth trends are tracked for significant deviations, and growth is also monitored for significant deficiency from genetic expectations. Genetics is a major factor in determining the height of individuals, though it is far less influential in regard to differences among populations. Average height is relevant to the measurement of the health and wellness, and this is the standard of living and quality of life of a population. Attributed as a significant reason for the trend of increasing height in parts of Europe are the egalitarian populations where proper not power, where proper medical care and adequate nutrition are relatively equally distributed. Average male height in a nation is correlated with protein quality. Nations that consume more protein in the form of meat, dairy, eggs, and fish tend to be taller, while those that attain more protein from cereals tend to be shorter. Changes in diet, there's nutrition, and in general, rise in quality of healthcare and standard of living are the cited factors in the Asian populations. Malnutrition, including chronic undernutrition and acute malnutrition, is known to have caused stunted growth in various populations. This has been seen in North Korea, no surprises there, parts of Africa, certain historical Europe, and other populations. Developing countries such as Guatemala have rates of stunting in children under 5 living as high as 82.2%. The Totonicapán and 49.8% nationwide. Height, like other phenotypic traits, is determined by a combination of genetics and environmental factors. A child's height based on parental heights is subject to regression towards the mean. Therefore, extremely tall or short parents will likely have correspondingly taller or shorter offspring, but their offspring will likely be closer to average height than the parents themselves. Genetic potential and a number of hormones, minus illness, is a basic determinant for height. Other factors include genetic response to external factors such as diet, exercise, environment, and life circumstances. Humans grow fastest, other than in the womb, as infants and toddlers, rapidly declining from a maximum at birth to roughly age 2, tapering to a slowly declining rate, and then during the pubertal growth spurt, a rapid rise to a second maximum at around 11 or 12 years for female and 13 to 14 years for male, followed by a steady decline to 0 again. On average, female growth speed trails off to 0 at about 15 or 16 years, whereas the male curve continues for approximately 3 more years, going to 0 at about 18 to 19. These are also critical periods where stresses such as malnutrition or even severe child neglect have the greatest effect. Moreover, the health of a mother throughout her life, especially during her critical period and pregnancy, has a role. A healthier child and adult develops a body that is better able to provide optimal parental conditions. The pregnant mother's health is important for herself, but also for the fetus, as gestation is itself a critical period for an embryo/fetus, though some problems affecting height during this period are resolved by catch-up growth, assuming childhood conditions are good. Thus, there is a cumulative generation effect such that nutrition and health over generations influences the height of descendants to varying degrees. The age of the mother also has some influence on her child's height. Studies in modern times have observed a gradual increase in height with maternal age, though these early studies suggest that that trend is due to various socio-economic situations that select certain demographics as being more likely to have a first birth early in their mother's life. These same studies show that children born to a young mother are more likely to have an below average educational and behavioral development, again suggesting the ultimate cause of resources and family status rather than purely biological explanation. Did you know I felt a little bit more like Humphrey from Yes Minister then?
I hear you. Now, the interesting thing is that two things here I want to just quickly focus on, Dave, because they bear mentioning. One, that protein taken or derived from grains is inferior to protein derived from animal meat, if you will.
Yes.
And thus people probably won't grow as tall. Now, interestingly enough, the Anunnaki and Igigi to some extent are credited with giving us agriculture. And I've always wondered, I mean, why do people decide to just, give up the nomadic lifestyle and become farmers and so forth? And of course, the answer was cities. So the question was, the question was cities, and the answer was agriculture. So if you want cities, you need to have agriculture or food. Now, this is really a learning thing here for us, and I want to share this with our listenership. But there's another effect. And whenever you come across these things, there's more than one reason for everything. Because you could just herd cattle. I mean, you could just have, and do that kind of farming rather than having grains. But it fulfilled another purpose. It fulfilled the purpose of keeping us shorter by feeding us bread and other cereals rather than meat. And in fact, we know from archaeological evidence that bread and grain were the more common source of food for our ancestors back at the time, and meat was a rare treat. Whereas when we were nomadic, meat was a much more readily or more often consumed source of protein. And in fact, if you look at Asia, rice, another cereal, is a massive component of a diet, leading to a population which is generally shorter than European counterparts, which consume a lot more red meat specifically. Second, so what I'm saying is that the way they fed us directly influenced our height as well. Okay. The second thing here is it's talking about the maximum the growth spurts, which goes to which is the maximum at the from birth to age of 2, and then it tapers off, and then again at 11 and 12 for females and 13 to 14 for males. So we have two rapid growth times within our lifespan that we all experience. My contention remains that if we didn't suffer from the kill switch and the telomerase turn off, if you will, there would be a third, potentially fourth, or even fifth growth spurt.
Or maybe they just go on for much longer.
Potentially, yes, absolutely. So, and other things like the second row of teeth, other changes to your biology as well. I mean, who knows? We haven't lived long enough and healthily enough to know. We haven't. We simply haven't. So these are the two things I wanted to quickly bring to everyone's attention, which are very interesting because they sort of they underscore yet again where we're going with this. It's very interesting. Now, the next bit is nature versus nurture, and I'm going to not going to share everything because there's probably a little bit too much information. It's been in the show notes, but the precise relationship between genetics and environment is complex and uncertain. Differences in human height is 60 to 80% heritable, according to several twin studies, interestingly. It has been considered polygenic since the Mendelian biometrician debate 100 years ago. So Mendel, if you remember, he came up with the whole tree of how your offspring turns out. And, it's very interesting and quite correct, in fact. A genome-wide association study of more than 180,000 individuals has identified hundreds of genetic variants in at least 180 loci associated with human adult height. The number of individuals has since expanded to 253, or, well, actually the right number is 253,288 individuals, and the number of genetic variants identified is 697 in 423 loci. That's locations in your genetic information. In a separate study of body proportion using sitting height ratio, it reports that these 697 variants can be partitioned into 3 specific classes. 1, variants that primarily determine leg length. 2, variants that primarily determine spine and head length, or 3, variants that affect overall body size. This gives insights into the biological mechanisms underlying how these 690 genetic variants affect overall height. These loci do not only determine height, but other features or characteristics. As an example, 4 of the 7 loci identified for intracranial volume had previously been discovered for human height. So let's be very clear here, right? The people that made these changes to us, they were master geneticists, okay? We have to say this here at this point. They were well beyond anything we can do today. They managed to create a hybrid subspecies, the Adamu, out of the genetic material of one of their own. So they took their own genetic material and modified it to make our ancestor race, right? Not us, our ancestor race. And interestingly, if you think about it, that's what every myth tells us, Dave. We were made in the image of God. Now, if you don't know anything about science or genetics, and you can't really explain it, like if I was, and in fact, if you go back to the original text, it's very clear that they're talking about genetic material. It's very clear. They took the Igigi and chopped his body up and used it, right? Boom, there it is. Whereas over time, of course, this eroded to, we were made in the image of God. Well, yes, in the most true sense of the word, in his or her genetic image, right? And it's really important that we understand this. Now, the effect of environment on height is illustrated by studies performed by anthropologist Barry Bogan and co-workers of Guatemala Mayan children living in the United States. In the early 1970s, when Bogan first visited Guatemala, he observed that Mayan Indian men averaged only 157.5 centimeters, which is about 5 feet 2 inches in height, and the women averaged 142 centimeters, which is about 4 feet 8. Bogan took another series of measurements after the Guatemalan Civil War, during which up to 1 million Guatemalans fled to the United States. He discovered that Maya refugees, who ranged from 6 to 12 years old, were significantly taller than their Guatemalan counterparts. By 2000, the American Maya were 10.24 centimeters taller, which is about 4 inches, than the Guatemalan Maya of the same age, largely due to better nutrition and healthcare. Bogan also noted that American Maya children had relatively longer legs, averaging 7 centimeters, which is about 3 inches, longer than the Guatemalan Maya. And that's a significantly lower sitting height ratio, right? It's really very interesting. Let me get some other statistics here. The tallest living married couple are ex-baseball players Yao Ming and Yi Li, both of China, who measured 7 feet 6 inches and 6 feet 3 inches, respectively. All right. In Tibet, the Khampas are known for their great height. Khampa males are on average 180 centimeters tall, which is 5 feet 11 inches. The people of the Dinaric Alps, mainly South Slavs or South Slavic origin, which is Montenegro and East Herzegovina, are on record as being the tallest in the world, with a male average height of 185.6 centimeters, which is 6 feet 1 inch, and female average height of 170 centimeters, which is about 5'7" in height. Dave, the process of growth.
Growth in stature, determined by its various factors, results from the lengthening of bones via cellular divisions, chiefly regulated by somatotropin, human growth hormone, or HGH, secreted by the anterior pituitary gland. Somatotropin also stimulates the release of another growth-inducing hormone, insulin-like growth factor, or IGF-1, mainly by the liver. Both hormones operate on most tissues of the body, have many other functions, and continue to be secreted throughout life. with peak levels coinciding with peak growth velocity, and gradually subsiding with age after adolescence. The bulk of secretion occurs in bursts, especially for adolescents, with the largest during sleep. Most intra-population variance of height is genetic. Short stature and tall stature are usually not a health concern. If the degree of deviation from normal is significant, hereditary short stature is known as familial short stature, and tall stature is known as familial tall stature. Confirmation that exceptional height is normal for a respective person can be ascertained from comparing stature of family members and analyzing growth trends for abrupt changes, among others. There are, however, various diseases and disorders that cause growth abnormalities. Most notably, extreme height may be pathological, such as gigantism resulting from childhood, or hyperpituitarism, and dwarfism, which has various causes. Rarely, no cause can be found for extreme height. Very short persons may be termed as having idiopathic short stature, which means it wasn't hereditary, it was no gene, it just randomly occurred for them. I know what idiopathic means. My daughter has an idiopathic disease. The United States Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, in 2003 approved HGH treatment for those 2.25 standard deviations below the population mean, approximately the lowest 1.2% of the population. An even rarer occurrence, or at least less used term, recognized problem as idiopathic tall stature. If not enough growth hormone is produced and or secreted by the pituitary gland, then a patient with growth hormone deficiency can undergo treatment. This treatment involves the injection of pure growth hormone into thick tissue to promote growth.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, this is the bit that's fascinating to me. It's height and health, and again, it sort of plays into the overall theme of discouraging the very tall growth in us humans and limiting us to below 6 feet as the norm, right? And having us only live to 100 years at maximum. Studies show that there is a correlation between small stature and a longer life expectancy. Individuals of small stature are also more likely to have lower blood pressure and are less likely to acquire cancer. The University of Hawaii has found that the longevity gene, which is FOXO3, which I mentioned earlier, that reduces the effects of aging, is more commonly found in individuals of a small body size. Short stature decreases the risk of venous insufficiency, as we mentioned earlier. Certain studies have shown that height is a factor in overall health, while some suggest tallness is associated with better cardiovascular health and shortness with longevity. Cancer risk has also been found to grow with height. Nonetheless, modern westernized interpretations of the relationship between height and health fail to account for the observed height variations worldwide. Cavalli-Sforza and Cavalli noted that variations in height worldwide can be partly attributed to evolutionary pressures resulting from differing environments. These evolutionary pressures result in height-related health implications. While tallness is an adaptive benefit in colder climates, such as found in Europe, shortness helps dissipate body heat in warmer climatic regions. Consequently, the relationships between health and height cannot be easily generalized, since tallness and shortness can both provide health benefits in different environmental settings. At the extreme end, being excessively tall can cause various medical problems, including cardiovascular problems because of the increased load on the heart to supply the body with blood, and problems resulting from the increased time it takes the brain to communicate with the extremities. For example, Robert Wadlow, whom we spoke of earlier, the tallest man known to verifiable history, developed trouble walking as his height increased throughout his life. In many of the pictures of the later portion of his life, Wadlow can be seen gripping something for support. Late in his life, although he died at age 22, he had to wear braces on his legs and walk with a cane. And he died after developing an infection in his legs because he was unable to feel the irritation and cutting caused by his leg braces. Sources are in disagreement about the overall relationship between height and longevity. Samaras and Elric in the Western Journal of Medicine demonstrate an inverse correlation between height and longevity in several mammals, including humans. All right, height and operational success. Oh, sorry, occupational success, my friend.
I had to take myself off mute again. There is a large body of research in psychology, economics, and human biology that has assessed the relationship between several seemingly innocuous physical features, for example, body height, and occupational success. The correlation between height and success was explored decades ago. Shorter people are considered to have an advantage in certain sports, gymnastics, race car driving, etc., whereas in many other sports, taller people have the major advantage, for instance, like basketball. In most occupational fields, body height is not relevant to how well people are able to perform. Nonetheless, several studies found that success was positively correlated with body height, although there may be other factors such as gender or socio-economic status that are correlated with height, which may account for the difference in success. A demonstration of the height-success association can be found in the realm of politics. In the United States presidential elections, the taller candidate won 22 out of 25 times in the 20th century. Nevertheless, Ignatius Loyola founded the Jesuits was 150 centimeters or 4'11", and several prominent world leaders of the 20th century, such as Vladimir Lenin, Benito Mussolini, and Nicolae Ceausescu, thank you, and Joseph Stalin were below average height. These examples, however, were all before modern forms of multimedia, i.e. television, which may further height discrimination in modern society. Further growing evidence suggests that height that may be a proxy for confidence, which is likewise strongly correlated with occupational success.
Fascinating. It's like we have a built-in, and this might just be a purely biological thing.
I know where you're going, and I'm going to agree with you on the fly, on the blind.
Right, I know, right? But but we have this seemingly built-in authority, obey reflex to taller people. Like I've seen it as well. Like if there's in management position, you will find taller people more often than not. Not always. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're short managers and short CEOs, but more often than not, we will automatically defer to the taller person as a figure of authority, right?
Just like gold, Mackie. Just like gold, we have a propensity to like gold and take authority from taller people.
Bingo. It's again, guys and girls, for that matter, it all points to a very inescapable conclusion.
Well, wait. So if we didn't have this automated respect of taller people in authority, then just think about the return of the Anunnaki, right? If we only promoted short people for CEO roles, and if it was reversed, and then they arrived, we go, well, who are you? You know, we'd imagine the disruption that would cause.
Oh, absolutely. Look, and the next bit is around the history of human height. I'm going to condense the text for you so we can get into something more entertaining, I guess. But to suffice to say, for the last 150 years, the average human height in industrialized nations, right? Industrialized nations has increased by up to 10 centimeters or almost 4 inches. Okay, and now these increases seem to have leveled off to some extent at this point. Okay, and interestingly enough, examinations of skeletons show no significant difference in height from the Stone Age through to the early 1800s. So starting in the early 1800s to now, we've gained 10 centimeters, but from the Stone Age, which we're talking like, 7,000-8,000 years ago, to now, there was very little difference in height from skeletons examined in Britain. Okay, this is British skeletons. And in fact, there weren't very many variations across populations within certain regions, right? But what we find, though, is that the adult height between populations differs significantly. Okay, and for example, the average height of the women from the Czech Republic is greater than that of the men from Malawi. This may be caused by genetic differences, childhood lifestyle differences, nutrition, sleep patterns, physical labor, or both. Depending on sex, genetic and environmental factors, shrinkage of stature may begin in middle age in some individuals, but tends to be universal in the extremely aged. This decrease in height is due to such factors as decreased height of intervertebral discs because of desiccation, atrophy of soft tissue, and postural changes secondary to degenerative disease. Now, what this all means is that gravity is making us shorter. Okay, so gravity makes sure that as we get older and all the repair mechanisms are switched off, as we've spoken about, like telomeres, hello, our bodies are shrinking, being hammered down by the one G-force we experience all of our lives. Average height around the world is not really all that interesting, but suffice it to say that the tallest men are from Bosnia, Herzegovina, the Netherlands, Croatia, Serbia, and Montenegro has the tallest average height, which is very interesting. And some data suggest that Herzegovinians have the genetic potential to be more than 2 inches taller than the Dutch. And I mean, so my point here is around all of this is that the genetic virus that I believe we were exposed to, a long time ago, affected different populations differently. And it had the same overall effect of curbing our height and longevity to where it is today. It expressed itself differently in different genetic groups because of our differences. Right? This might sound like double Dutch or a very common sense thing to say, but I think that's exactly what happened. And of course, there's no evidence at all for my assertion that at some point a genetic virus was released to keep us short and short-lived, except of course for the primary texts, right? We were dispersed, our language was confused, we were given a lifespan of 120 years, and we were no longer allowed to be tall. So it is really very interesting how the elder civilizations remembered all of this, and we have but the shadow of a memory because our memory is handed down through generations in the Bible and other religious texts, and it's watered down significantly. Go to the primary texts, I say. Which brings us, Dave, I think we've got a few more minutes, to 10 mythical giants from around the world, and that's the entertaining bit I alluded to earlier. Go ahead.
Awesome. As with any statistical data, the accuracy of such data may be questionable for various reasons. Oh, is that... No, we're further on, aren't we? Yeah, here we go.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Okay. Giants loom large in world mythology, frequently representing the most ominous of foes. Their huge size immediately evokes ideas of superhuman strength and formidable abilities, and yet in many legends the giant is in fact a tragic character, often suffering an incongruous death. The giants below are a weird and wonderful sample of folklore from around the world. Number 1, Atlas, the great giant who holds up the sky. In Greek mythology, Atlas was one of the Titans who went to war against Zeus's gods of Olympus. When the Titans lost, Zeus condemned Atlas to hold up the sky for all eternity. During the 12 labors of Hercules, one of his famous quests was to find the golden apples of Hesperides. Atlas offered to go and fetch the apples for Hercules, if he would take his place holding up the sky. Atlas duly retrieved the apples and was about to take them to Eurystheus when Hercules asked if Atlas would mind just holding the sky again for a minute while he got comfortable. Of course, as soon as Atlas had re-shouldered his heavy burden, Hercules made off with the apples and continued with his task, leaving Atlas with his interminable duty. Another legend involving Atlas featured the hero Perseus, who encountered Atlas in the northwest region of Africa. Atlas tried to scare Perseus away, and so Perseus took Medusa's severed head from his bag. When Atlas saw the terrible Gorgon, he turned to stone, becoming the Atlas mountain range.
Interesting, right? And Balor, the one-eyed god of death. In Irish mythology, Balor was the king of the Fomorians, a race of giants who were said to be early settlers of Ireland. Balor, much like the Cyclops, was a one-eyed giant and the god of death. Whoever was caught in his gaze would die instantly. Due to this unfortunate tendency, Balor kept a single eye closed until his terrible power was needed. According to a prophecy, it was said that Balor would be killed by his own grandson, and so he imprisoned his daughter, Etheline, in a crystal tower in a vain attempt to prevent her having any offspring. However, before long, Cain, a minor god, snuck in and impregnated Etheline, who gave birth to 3 sons. On discovering the birth of his grandsons, Balor had them thrown into the sea, but one boy, Luke, escaped his fate and was fostered by Manannán mac Lir, the god of the sea. The prophecy finally played out when Luke led the Tuatha de Danann, a race of Irish gods, into battle and killed Balor by ripping out his eye. Yet again, a race of gods fighting the Titans or giants, right?
Wow, so the next one is the Hrungnir, drunken Norse giant. There are countless giants in Norse legends. The Hrungnir was one of the biggest and baddest. One day, Odin, the leader of the Norse gods of Asgard, challenged Hrungnir to a horse race. Odin rode his super-fast 8-legged steed, Sleipnir, and Hrungnir rode his standard-legged horse, Gulfaxi. Unsurprisingly, Sleipnir outrun Gulfaxi and led him into the realm of Asgard, where, feeling sorry for the loser, Odin invited Hrungnir in for a drink. Unfortunately, Hrungnir was not a good drunk and had soon become belligerent and argumentative, claiming that he could kill all the gods of Asgard except for the goddess Freya and Sif, whom he would carry off with him to Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Becoming tired of Hrungnir's arrogance, the other gods called upon Thor, who challenged Hrungnir to a duel. Hrungnir agreed, and on the day of the fight he turned up clad in stone armor and carrying a giant whetstone as a weapon. Thor threw his trusty hammer, or Mjolnir, and it smashed through both the whetstone and Hrungnir's head, and the latter fell to his death. It is said that fragments of the whetstone fell to earth and became the flint we see around us today.
Interesting.
Belligerent.
I know, belligerent. Gentil, heathen giants. Gentil are giants from the mythology of the Basque region of France in Spain, and are said to represent the pagans who inhabited the land before Christianity. Gentil were enormous, strong, and hairy, and loved to throw rocks. Because of this, they were thought to have built the many megalithic stone circles and dolmens in the Basque region. According to legend, the Gentil died out after a huge bright cloud appeared, heralding the birth of Jesus. The frightened gentle did not want change and ran down the mountains and hid in a dolmen, never to return. However, one gentle survived, Orlensero, an especially large and grumpy giant who enjoyed a tipple. Having survived the death of his people, he is said to have walked to the nearest village and cut the throat of all the greedy people who had eaten too much. This legend was soon adopted and adapted during the rise of Christianity, and Orlensero was repackaged as a Basque version of Santa Claus. In this sanitized reimagining, he visits children on Christmas Eve bringing toys he has crafted himself. Interesting.
Wow, this is the last one I think we'll get to, this one. Goliath,
Yep.
biblical giant. Goliath was a biblical giant defeated against the odds by the shepherd David. Described in the book of Samuel, Goliath was a Philistine champion from the city of Gath, which was where an ancient race of giants was said to originate. The exact size of Goliath is debated, but it seems he was either 6 or 8 foot or 9'7". Either way, he was a lot bigger than his seemingly puny opponent, David, who is also described in the Bible as being clad in an imposing amount of bronze armor. In the classic story of the plucky underdog, David strides out to face Goliath with nothing but a humble slingshot. The fate of his people in his hands, David launches a stone from his slingshot, which hits Goliath right between the eyes, and he falls down dead. In a rather gruesome turn of events, David then cuts off Goliath's head, and with the giant's own sword, mind you. As most of us know, the story of David versus Goliath has since come to represent the ultimate victory of the underdog. That's what I've been doing wrong all this time. I've never used their weapon to decapitate them afterwards.
You see, there's always a reason, Dave. There's always a reason.
Yeah, right. Yeah, jail term. That's right.
Jail. That's what happens. A fascinating subject, and as you can see, connected to virtually everything else as well. So stay tuned. After this, Gerber is coming with a roundtable, but come back next week for more giant action. And next week we're talking about Polyphemus, the one-eyed Cyclops, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff as well. More science to throw at you.
Hi, science.
And I know, right? and please do donate if you can. This isn't a fun radio. We hope you had a good time. Dave and I love to have you listen to us. And well, if there's something that you learn along the way, maybe change your mind on something, our job is done.
There's the music. We'll see you next week, guys. Take care.
Hey, buddy.